Welcome to the Partners Podcast, where you get exclusive behind-the-scenes access to entrepreneurs who are relentlessly building real, profitable companies. Join us as we ask them the hard questions so you can take away the mindset, strategy, and tactics that launch them to success.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Partners Podcast. I'm Adrian. Normally, we have Brennan in this position here in the seat. Some of you are familiar with me as part of the ACRE partner team, as well as Cam Bohorquez. And Cam is joining us today as a special guest. He's actually an internal team member within ACRE partner, as well as a business owner himself with Dia Talent Solutions. So as the name would suggest, Cam is a talent acquisition specialist with a number of years under his belt and a lot of experience. As a matter of fact, Cam has helped us to really cover the full spectrum of hiring and onboarding and bringing on some amazing talent at Aerial Canvas, our business. And I think that number is in the multiple of tens, right? 30, 40, something in that neighborhood. So a lot of great people that you've helped us bring on, and people that have been with us for quite a while. So shout out to you. But yeah, I'd love to welcome Cam to this episode. We're going to be talking a little bit about the employee life cycle, right? The kind of the spectrum of what it takes to find the right talent, the A players, to bring them on. And then I think some of the things that often don't get consideration in terms of that full spectrum, from hiring to all the way through to what if they don't stick with you, or they move on. What does that look like, and exit interviews and all that. So we're going to try to touch on some of those key things and I'll uncover a few key details about that hiring life cycle. So thanks for joining us, Kim. And you want to do a quick intro as well on yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Adrian. I appreciate it. No, it's a pleasure to join this episode. Some of the topics I'll be discussing are near and dear to my heart. Something I'm really passionate about: building culture, how to bring on the right people, how to retain them, things like that. Definitely really excited to share more. And as Adrian mentioned, I've had years of experience. I've actually had a few different careers, but even before I started my HR recruiting talent acquisition career, I was a filmmaker, photographer myself. Never did real estate, but did a lot of weddings, events, portraits, you name it, a little bit of everything. So that's one thing that makes me extra passionate and excited to work with creative agencies, is the fact that I'm a creative myself. And for about 6 years of my career, did that professionally, still do it on the side, more as a hobbyist. But I think that gives me a really unique perspective and understanding of not only what agencies are looking for in their creatives, but also what creatives are looking for in opportunities, and what are some of the things that motivate them to join a company, and how to retain them, how to keep them engaged throughout the process. So that's really helped me advise creative agencies for the last few years. And like you mentioned, helped hire quite a bit of people, not just creatives, project managers, sales, operations, a little bit of everything for Aerial Canvas. And now for the past year, I've been working with ACRE Partner on some one-on-one projects, some bigger projects, helping people recruit their first or second or third creatives onto the team, and have really enjoyed that so far. So it's been a pleasure to learn from each and every one of the ACRE partners. And as we continue to grow, it's been really fun to meet more people, see different challenges that they face, and be able to use my expertise to help them with anything within the talent, HR, and recruiting realm.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that really as well, because that's something obviously I hadn't mentioned in your intro, right? But yeah, you've worked with a number of different partners within the ACRE partner community, and those agency owners to support them as well, and to help bring people on. And as we talked about this recently, but people have had a lot of really awesome feedback about you, man, and what you do and how you do it. So thank you so much for your contributions to that. And there's an obvious amount of passion about what you do. You spoke to that a second ago, but it really is very clear to me and to others. I think that what you do is something that you love doing. At times, I know there's challenging aspects of it, but yeah. And then of course, being a creative has you uniquely positioned to work within this vertical, this industry specifically. And I know obviously we had talked recently too about the fact that you're also working with and have a good opportunity with, I think I don't know if it was an insurance company, I forget, but you're working with other clients, obviously outside of the real estate media marketing vertical now as well, and branching out and expanding your company in that way. So congrats on that. But of course, being creative minded, being a creative, whether it's hobbyist, professional, whatever it is, for sure, has you uniquely positioned to understand the challenges as well as like the mindset and perspective of those people that you're looking to potentially bring on. So yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I kind of, it's funny. I tell this, and I'll only tell an abridged version of the story. But when I first applied to work with Aerial Canvasser, when I first sort of, was entertaining that and walked into a room with Brendan, our founder of ACRE Partner and co-founder of Aerial Canvas, it was a very unique type of interview, not unlike anything I'd ever done before. We went out in the field and like he offered to let me fly the drone. It was just like crazy. And I was like, what is this really an interview? This is awesome. It was unlike anything I've ever done before. But I applied initially to be a creative, and ended up just starting with sales and biz dev and partnerships in that field, just because that was what all my background was. But what attracted me to the company, what made me, I think, again, uniquely positioned to kind of, to be there and to actually join at that time was that I, was passionate about it and enjoy the creative side of it. And that's what, kept me doing what I was doing for so long as well, and allowed me to kind of like recognize some of the talent that we had there at Aerial Canvas and still have. But anyways, without going on a tangent, I guess to kind of prompt the first part of our like conversation about our topic today, what would you say are some of the most important aspects that an agency owner should be thinking about when hiring the first, or like the first key team members or the first few members of their team? Um, yeah, if that kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah,
makes sense.
absolutely. No, I think that I get this question a lot. And with an Acre partner and other clients I've worked with, typically I get approached when someone's looking to hire their first person, and they ask me the question, should I consider, a contractor, part-time, full-time? That's kind of another conversation. But, when the decision is made to bring on someone, an employee, not a contractor, whether it's part-time or full-time, obviously it depends on the amount of work and the need for them and also the season. Typically I get asked, what are the most important aspects? And going into a talent acquisition and recruiting process, a lot of people have tried to do it on their own, and I think I commend them for that. And a lot of self starters, are agency owners, and they've been able to figure out a lot of aspects of their business, sales, project management, developing their business, things like that. And obviously come to Acre Partner to get more advice, more coaching on how to take their business to the next level. But when they go and try to recruit on their own without having too much background in recruiting and in that whole space, what ends up happening a lot is you get people that go with referrals, and I think referrals are great to a certain extent. But if you don't do a full recruiting process, like including sourcing multiple candidates, actually having a pool of talent that you can kind of pick from, and especially doing an interview process, which I've seen a lot of people skip that part and just have a conversation and say, oh, this agent recommended this person, they said they were great. What ends up happening is you don't get to really understand the person's skill set, their personality, their culture fit. There's so many things that get lost in translation when you forego that interview process. And a lot of people just kind of go with their first person. If they see someone that looks great on paper, or has a good portfolio, they just hire them. And I've heard so many stories of those people not working out, whether it's because they weren't able to take feedback well, they maybe weren't the most professional people, or just weren't a culture fit in the long run. And I think it
Yeah. It sounds like it's something that's especially common in the season of real need, or in a in a pinch, right? Where that busy season hits. We all understand the seasonality of the real estate marketing business. There's a slow season, and then there's the peak seasons of the year. And I think some of the things that I've seen is kind of what you just spoke to is a referral came in, they're already underwater, right? Really need somebody, and then just lean into that heavily, right? Like, okay, let's run with it. So that's not uncommon for
think you
sure.
nailed that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another thing. Yeah, out of desperation. And that's a big part of it. They don't really have a plan until it's too late. And they're like, oh man, we needed someone yesterday or 2 weeks ago. So they kind of go with the first person and forget that, hiring a really talented individual isn't just about, bringing someone on and fully vetting them, but also you want to give that person a really great engaging hiring process, but also onboarding process. So what ends up happening is they bring the first person on, don't really have an organized recruiting or onboarding process or training process, and that's something that also leads to
Mm.
losing people. And another reason I've heard a lot is they'll hire someone, they'll train them, invest months in training someone, which is a lot of money. If you think about your time, it's really valuable. You could be doing sales, business development, but you're spending 30, 40 hours a week training someone for multiple weeks, and then they end up leaving, taking everything that they learn and starting their own agency, right? And I've heard that countless times. And again, it comes down to
Yeah.
your process and the questions that you ask, and really understanding the intentions and motivations of the person that you're hiring before you hire them, right? So I think that's some of the things to think about. But yeah, I can share a little bit more about kind of just like how to prepare to bring on your first hire or your second or third hire.
Yeah, I think you touched on something a second ago, and you mentioned that it is a common thing, but I think it's probably, the at the top of the list or right below in terms of like the concerns or the commonality type of issues that we see with this industry in particular. And that is that, yeah, a creative will come in, or in some cases it's maybe somebody else, but most commonly, a photographer, videographer, someone with a little bit of a background, and then they'll gain a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge, and some connections and relationships to clients, and then off they go to potentially start their own version, or to take a few clients with them to start fulfilling projects for them on their own. So yeah, I mean, that's definitely something that we've heard on a number of different occasions. Do you want to? I guess we can just kind of take a small tangent on that because it is such a common thing that we hear. Do you want to speak to that a little bit? I mean, I know you just touched on it, but if someone was asking like, hey, what are the best preventative measures to take against insulating, against that? What can people do there?
Yeah, no, that's a great question because I think this is something like you mentioned and I mentioned that happens a lot, and especially for early agency owners or startups, they lose a lot of people because of that. And I think there's a few different ways. I think first and foremost, you have to think about, like I mentioned, the recruiting process, right? If you're just bringing someone off a referral and you don't really know them, that you don't know their intentions, you haven't taken the time to really vet them, understand their personality, understand their goals, that's the first mistake that happens. So you bring them on, and then maybe they have an ulterior motive, or maybe they don't. Maybe it's a situation where they wanted to come on and join this business, but it's everything that happens after you hire them. So maybe the training program or the job itself, they're realizing, oh man, this is burning me out. I could make more money on my own, something like that. So one of the first things that I would recommend, preventative, to avoid that and other issues of having people leave or them not working out, is developing a robust, efficient, and structured recruiting process. Right. So even if you have let's say 2 or 3 referrals and you haven't actually gone out and posted a job and done that, it's a good idea to actually put them through a few rounds of interviews and ask really specific questions that are going to help you get at their skill set, their personality, how they're going to get along with other team members. A really, really important one is coachability, because we lose a lot of people because they're not coachable, they're not able to take direction, they're
Hmm.
not good at taking feedback. So those are all questions that can be developed, and again, you put them through this interview process not only because it's going to help you, but it also helps them see that you're legit, like you have thought about these things, and having a great process will help people really respect your company from the start. It's kind of like the first impression, but also will help you pick the right person. So I think that's one thing. And then the other aspect is,
Yeah.
once you bring them on, making sure that you have uh, a level of organization to your business, like have some systems in place to make things easier. Obviously, you're offering them competitive pay and some benefits, and maybe not a ton of benefits right off the bat, but you're showing them that you value them, and you're keeping them financially stable, and also building out like a progression plan to keep them engaged and see that they can go a long way. Because I think another reason people end up leaving pretty quickly is they come on and see it more as a job or a gig, and don't see a future working with a company.
Hmm.
But I think especially with startups and smaller agencies, there's quite a future, right? There's so much room for growth. There's so much opportunity for that person to grow and get promotions
Yeah.
and things like that. So when you're not really pitching that or selling that to the new hire, of course they're gonna wonder if this is somewhere they want to stay long term, and they might leave pretty quickly when they realize they're going to be paid the same thing, or they think they're going to be at the same level forever. So if you make it more of a
Mhm.
career than a job, then that's where you can really retain people long term.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, there's a few things in there that were, I mean, that was pretty comprehensive, actually, for just the couple minutes that you spent talking about it. And I think a couple things that stood out to me are, that resonated were, yeah, painting that vision and creating that inclusive culture and giving them the respect of providing that long-term visibility, is definitely, it's something that you would want, right? And of course, as agency owners and top level executives within the businesses, that sometimes we're not looking at it that way, but it's certainly something that we would want, right? So I think that's definitely a respect type of thing, is to kind of provide that roadmap as best you can, and continually, getting a temperature check and a finger on the pulse of how invested they are. Because thinking back to, my time at Aerial Canvas, sometimes I would see people come on and, at a time where, we're busy, it's peak season. I mean, growth is happening, in some cases, like just rapid growth and expansion, and people seemingly sometimes weren't heavily invested in, in kind of what was going on, and the mission and vision of the company. But that it was certainly, in a lot of cases, not their fault, right? Because that wasn't fully communicated. Like, one thing I liked about working directly, in small business in general, it's great, but being able to work directly with, like, the founder and co-founder, was that, and for lack of a better term, like, I was continually being sold the dream, and like working with Brendan and being in a room with him, and with Colby and with others at the ground floor of Aerial Canvas, and years into my journey, being able to be around them, and feeling their passion, hearing, the sort of all the conversations about the future of the business and where we were steering the ship and how we cared about our people, fed directly into my day-to-day, buy-in, and what I wanted to do, how I wanted to perform, where I saw myself in the future, and eventually feeling like I was part of, a family that I wanted to keep close to me, right, and be supportive of, and feed what I believed into other people, so that they would stick around, right. That was kind of became one of my goals beyond just my day-to-day job, and that was because there was so much given to me, even sometimes unknowingly. It's not like they were actively trying to, like, you know, uh, sort of do this, right, or be pitching the vision, as you put it, right. But it was just that, like, that respect that they would give to treat everybody like, they were a part of something that was moving forward. And so, anyways, yeah, definitely appreciated what you had to say there, and I think that those are definitely some things that are kind of overlooked, right? Some of the things that we hear in some cases from agency owners when they do have someone leave, and we understand how incredibly frustrating that can be when you have invested that time, the energy, the resources, right? And somebody walks, and then not only do they go, which is, tough enough for the business, but they're taking potentially clients with them, or whatever. In some cases, you want to be celebratory of the fact that they're, forwarding their journey, and there's nothing you can do about it. If they're going, they're going, right. But it can also be very frustrating, and sometimes we hear those conversations come from a place of frustration, and, like, hey, this is not cool, I'm not liking it, how do I prevent this? But there does need to be an element of looking in the mirror, right. And, or I guess the way I should put it is, you don't want to, go look in the mirror and be asking yourself, did I do everything that I could have to potentially prevent that from happening? Meaning a lot of the things that you just covered, right? Like having a progression plan, making sure that, there's a good understanding of kind of where they're at and where they could be, regularly checking in with them, giving them an understanding of the, the state of the business, and where you want to go, and how they can be along, on that journey with you. So all those things I think definitely factor in. And when that's done right, or when it's done at, 90 or 100%, I think you dramatically lower your chances, or extend the timeline, if they're potentially going to go, of that person going, and for sure not going in a way that's going to be detrimental to your business.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
No, and you bring up a really good point, like having that empathy and putting yourself in the shoes of your employees or your candidates is one of the most important things that I teach people and I coach people on, because a lot of the times they have a conception of what you should do when you're hiring someone, and a lot of the times it looks like, you're talking at them, in a job description or in, whatever communications you have, and you're not talking with them, or making them feel like they can be a part. And what I mean by that is, we see that people pitch a job, like in a job description or in a phone call, as, why should we hire you? A lot of the times I hear that it's like, tell us why we should hire you, why you qualified. But
Yeah, I've been guilty of that
yeah,
myself in interviews for sure. Just
exactly. And again,
yeah,
it's an important question to ask.
yeah.
But when you make the whole process about, why should we hire you, especially as at an early scale, um, agency. I mean, of course, if you look at the Metas, the Googles, the Apples, of course, they have a lot to offer, right? So it's like they can more confidently ask, though, like, why should we hire you? We're this great company. But when you're at the scale of a startup, you have to be able to offer more to the person, to get them, especially if they're really top talent creatives, like really solid early career or mid career creatives that are hungry, want to join an organization and kind of give it their all. You should be thinking, what can we offer? What can we do for them? And that's where, a lot of the things come in when you're building out, something called an employer value proposition, which is really, uh, a lot of people have these for their business, like a business value proposition. Of course, we're familiar with that. Like, to your
Hmm.
clients, it's how you sell your services. Like, why should you work with us? And when you start hiring and building a team, and this works, both externally and internally, it's kind of like all the messaging and communication you build around, what are the benefits of someone working with us. And for a lot of smaller agency owners, I mean, you have so much to offer, right? You have, uh, an ability to come on and make an impact, right? Like, many people that join these bigger agencies, they kind of get lost in the crowd, or some of these bigger real estate, media agencies, they kind of just get treated like contractors, like, and don't get a lot of face time with, the leaders, or a lot of mentorship or development. And so when you get to join a company of one or two or three, you're going to be directly working, like you mentioned, directly working with the founders, directly working with the management of the company, and get so much exposure to, development, learning, right? So, that's one of the things that I tell people that maybe don't necessarily have a huge brand, right? They don't have that brand recognition for their agency. So, it might be a little harder for people to be really enticed or attracted to come work with them. You can use a lot of other things. And again, they might not have the benefits or the pay that, a bigger company might have, but there's a lot of things you can offer in the form of development, career progression, impact that they can make, and just the amount of
Hmm.
training that they can get out of it. So, you got to just kind of think creatively about, like, what are you going to be offering, and put yourself in their shoes and think, would I want to work for myself? Right. And you have to ask yourself that when you're building your job description, when you're interviewing, when you're building your training program, and so on and so forth. And that's why I mentioned empathy is so important, like understanding from their perspective. And if you wouldn't want to work for yourself, what makes you think that someone else would? So if you kind of use that mindset, it'll always help you develop, a series of communications and a recruiting process, and, an overall, environment that's going to be attractive for someone to come on and stay on with your company long term.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think it again that definitely resonates as I think back to like my early conversations with Brendan. At the time that I joined Aerial Canvas, I was working at a job that really wasn't. It was no longer challenging. I'd been there. I knew I had been at that role, for too long. I'd done different things within the business and learned a lot of the sales skills, that I was bringing to the table and everything. But I knew that I needed something different and something that was more aligned with my passions. But Aerial Canvas at the time was a handful of team members, in a tiny. I mean, we called it an office, but it was actually a storage unit, and it was very clear walking in the door, like, okay, this is something that's small. But when I sat down with the owner of the business and had that conversation with him, the ultimate feeling that I had at the end of that day, at the end of that, what was a crazy, technically it was an interview, but it was more of like a, hey, join me on my day, let's do a ride along, like Ice Cube style, right? It was the feeling that I had was, whatever this is, wherever the ship's going, I want to be on it and I want to be a part of it. Right. And so that's like in a perfect world, the feeling that you want to get as a potential candidate, because we weren't anywhere near the levels of success that Aerial Campus is at now. And there was no guarantee or no promise. I was technically taking a hit, pay like compensation wise, to come and join that company. But I was excited, and a specific message had been delivered to me, and there was care and attention that was put into delivering that message. Where, like you said, there was individuals there who were creative, crafty, and thinking outside of the box in how they wanted to deliver their employer value proposition, right? Because really it was a risk. There was no guarantee with a business that small that they're going to turn a corner, that they're going to, do what they want to do or what they say they're going to do, and provide me with a long-term opportunity. But I came away believing that it was going to, right? And so I think that's incredibly valuable to think outside of the box and figure out like, okay, we may not have this, that, or the other, but how can we structure our conversation and our offering in a way that is going to attract the right talent and get them in and then keep them here, right? So that's awesome. Yeah. Cool. Well, I think we only have a few more minutes remaining, but I wanted to touch briefly on the importance of like candidate experience. This is something I know that we had mentioned prior to this that we wanted to talk about. So if you could maybe touch on that and how you can kind of provide a great experience for candidates throughout the like the recruiting process, right, and give yourself that sort of best chance of success.
Yeah, absolutely. No, great question. And this is something that for me, throughout my HR career, I'm now going into my seventh year of working in HR, talent acquisition. I've gotten a really good understanding of what makes a great recruiting and hiring process and what makes a not so great. And I've seen this as a recruiter, like providing that experience, but also as a candidate for like a various jobs that I've applied for throughout my career, and just didn't really feel very welcomed, or it was a really tough way too many rounds of interviews or not enough interviews to where I question, are they really vetting their people? So I think first and foremost
Yeah.
with candidate experience, and again, I already kind of mentioned the empathy part, like, understanding what they're going through. But to take it one step further, you want to think about a few aspects. The communication, how steady the communication is, how consistent is it. Are they waiting weeks before they hear back after they apply, or weeks after the first interview? That's not going to feel great. You're going to lose a lot of people like that. And even if you don't lose them, they're kind of just going to have a salty feeling, because it's going to show that you're disorganized, that you're not very great at communication. And if you're showcasing those things already during the hiring process, what are they going to think things are going to be like internally? So the hiring process is really your
Yeah.
first impression, right? From the moment that you post a job, through the interview process, through the offer process, all of those things, the candidate's going to be taking notes and really understanding, what kind of business is this? Like, that's where you're going to be able to showcase your professionalism, your organization, your culture. So thinking about those things, and it all starts with communication, like being able to get back to the candidates as soon as possible is highly important. And again, you need to build out a structured recruiting process and have systems in place so you can keep your candidates organized, keep it tracked, and understand, this is the last time we reached out to them, or this is the day that they applied. We want to make sure to get back to them within the week, And so there's a lot of systems that can help you keep track of that. But I would say number one is definitely communication, not keeping them waiting too long, and making sure that when you do communicate, it comes from a place like genuine, right? And it's okay to use templates and automations, but making sure the messages that you sent don't seem like they're coming from a robot, but actually have like a human element to it, because that'll definitely help uh, humanize your company and
Hmm.
make them feel good. So I think communication is number one. And then number two, the most important thing is obviously the interview process. Once you do have a great pool of candidates, which takes some steps, right? Obviously, sourcing and promoting your job and things like that. But once you have the people in the interview stage, having an interview that makes sense, right? So not having too many rounds of interviews to where it's like too tiresome for them and they just feel like they're going through the ringer, but not just having one interview, like I mentioned earlier, and then hiring them right after that, because you're not going to have enough time to learn about them and know if they're a solid candidate. So devising
Hmm.
an interview process that makes sense. And what I usually recommend is doing three separate rounds. So starting out with a phone call, I usually call it the informational call or a phone screen. And that gives you the opportunity to talk to them for 15, 20 minutes. It's a really brief call, but really what you're looking for in that experience is an opportunity to see if they can communicate effectively, if they can speak a little bit to their experience in a way that makes sense from what they wrote on their portfolio or on the resume. And then it's an opportunity for
Mm-hmm.
you, because you always want to think about what you're offering to them, like I mentioned, and the experience you're giving them, to showcase, your kindness, your personality. Like, if you're a fun company, be fun on the call, right? If you're trying to be super serious and like very
Mm-hmm.
professional, then of course be that on the call, right? And if you're somewhere in the middle, to figure out, what questions you're going to ask and how you're going to interact with the candidate. And what I say throughout the interview process, be very engaging, like listen to them. When they answer a question, don't just go on to the next question, but actually take some time to engage with that and make it more of a conversation, because that's going to provide an even better candidate experience. And then, so the phone screen's number one. Then I do a video interview, give you a chance to talk to them face to face, through video, so you don't have to coordinate having them come into the office just yet. And that gives you an opportunity to ask more questions. These typically last about 30 minutes. And again, being very engaging and answering all their questions, telling them a lot about the company, about the opportunity. This is a great time to like pitch your value proposition to them. And then the final stage, that's where I recommend you actually have them come into the office, give them an office tour. If you don't have an office yet, you meet them at a coffee shop. But that's where you really get to meet them face to face, and that takes about an hour or a little bit longer if you're doing an office tour. And I think that's just an excellent opportunity, again, to kind of give them that final look at who you are. And then some people choose to do like a job shadow, like attached to that interview,
Mm-hmm.
which I always recommend, because that gives them an opportunity to come and see what the job looks like, but also gives you the opportunity to see how they interact with clients. If they know like how to use a camera, if they're able to kind of spot some of the things in the home. But again, throughout that process, I think the most important thing is communicating effectively, keeping them in the loop throughout, and providing a really engaging process, so they kind of see your personality, they see the type of company you are, and they want to work for you, right? They want to work with you, and they see this as like a place that they can work for long term. So those are just some of the elements of
Yeah.
a candidate engagement, or making sure to have a really good candidate experience. But I think those are the most important ones to think about.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, that definitely turned on a few light bulbs for me, and had me thinking about some team members at Aerial Canvas, and yeah, I mean the where you just outlined obviously is definitely an ideal experience. Obviously, sometimes we're hiring people who are remote, or like in a VA space, or in a whole different part of the globe. So there's obviously some considerations to be made there, and sometimes you can have them come join you physically, other times you can't. But still, even without that physical aspect, I think that there's thinking outside of the box that can be done, where you can still give them that kind of that tour of what the company's about, and your your digital workspace, right? So yeah, that's awesome. I think it's definitely has me thinking about sometimes our agency owners are I think it's probably common that, or semi-common, that people feel like that they either don't know enough about it, so they just go with what they do know, or that they can kind of shortcut some of those steps. But with each one of those steps that you outlined, again, kind of going back to the percentages thing, right? You're sort of incrementally lowering the chances of making a very costly mishire. Something that's going to cost you $10,000-$20,000 of investment, right, over the time and energy that you put in. So you're really just, it's you're saving money, because you're, creating these layers of security, with ensuring that the person is continually invested in coming back to meet with you and take that next step. And, always demonstrating more and more value, and that they're invested, that they're willing, that they know about the company, that they have the skills needed. I mean, just thinking about, I mean, Henry at Aerial Canvas, right? Shout out to Henry if you happen to be listening. This is a guy who had, no prior, camera experience at all, really, right? But if you're just going by, what does the portfolio look like? We need somebody fast. We need them now. The portfolio looks great. I'm sure that they can perform. Let's bring them in. That's oftentimes not enough, right? Because we've definitely worked with creatives who had an amazing background, but also a lot of preconceived notions, a lot of their own biases. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing. It's all into the spectrum, right? We've had creatives that we've worked with that have bring a lot of talent, and they're also very humble, coachable, ready to jump in and do something new and learn with us and ride with the business. But then, you've got guys like Henry who knew next to nothing about just the creative side of the business in general, coming as a photographer, and now, like, over a year later, is the most highly requested, photographer on our team, or one of them. And clients absolutely love him. His experience is amazing on site, like, and this guy, I think, had a great, hiring experience, or, candidate experience, right? Because he was treated well and brought in the right way. So it is definitely pretty important. But yeah, I kind of want to wrap it up on that note. And there was a few things we didn't get a chance to cover, but I do want to say that you've done some live workshops with us in the past here in the ACRE partner community. You're obviously directly tied to what we do on a day-to-day, as well as running your own ship with Dia Talent Solutions. So yeah, for those who are listening, we have a couple of, obviously, we record all of our workshops that we do within the ACRE partner community, and we're happy to share those so that people can get an idea of diving deeper into some of what we talked about today, as well as more details about talent acquisition in general and the hiring process. Also, you will be, I think we kind of confirmed this recently, right? But you will be out in Tulum, Mexico, this coming November, mid-November, like 16th through the 18th. So, you guys, again, for those listening who are going to be there, you can catch Cam out there in Mexico. And I think we'll probably do another, episode, another version of this soon, and be on the lookout, for Cam for support, of course, and also, in those workshops. So thank you so much, Cam. If you have any kind of final notes, or anything else that you want to drop or leave people with, go for it. But we could
Yeah, I
wrap it there.
appreciate it. No, it's been a pleasure. And yeah, I mean, these topics are things that we could dive deeper into, and there's so many more considerations, not just throughout the recruiting and hiring process, but what do you do once you bring them on? Like, how do you onboard them? How do you keep them engaged? And then how do you keep them with the
Yeah,
company? So definitely excited to share more about that. And if anyone has any questions about anything specific, I'm always available to jump on the phone and go through that. So, but yeah, I just want to say thank you to all the ACRE partners and everyone on the ACRE team. It's been a pleasure working with everyone, and I look forward to helping people grow their team and hire some people using some really good techniques that are going to save them a lot of time and money. So looking forward to meeting more of you, and yeah, looking forward to working with everyone.
for sure. Appreciate it, Cam. Yeah, no doubt about it. You've been, a godsend to a number of our, our partners and individuals that we work with. So thank you for doing what you do and for bringing that level of caring, compassion to it. Look forward to chatting with you further and connecting with you soon. But and shout out to our audience as well. So thanks, Cam, and we'll catch up soon.